Hello, Nadia here, and today I'm going to show you how to put together 3 memory wire rings. The kit is available to buy from our website, and I'm going to show you how to make a double ring with some dangles on it, a 3-coil ring which is just a plain ring, and a single ring which has a whole cluster of dangles on the top, and you can wear them individually or you can stack them, and they will fit any finger because of the material that we're making them out of. But before I show you how to make them, please subscribe to our website if you're excited about learning to make jewelry with us, and we have new kits coming out every week, so do leave us feedback and comments and anything that you would like us to teach you as well. Let's start off by looking at this material. Memory wire comes in different sizes and it's always coiled, and it's called memory wire because it retains its shape. It's made out of aluminium, and so the problem with aluminium is it's very, very thick. It's quite difficult to cut. So apart from my normal kit of tools that I will be using, which is my cutters, my flat nose pliers and my round nose pliers, you will need memory wire cutters. Don't try cutting memory wire with normal cutters because they might not be able to cut it, but they will also get ruined immediately. So these cutters are called memory wire cutters, and they basically will cut any spring and won't get damaged, each one of the rings. So you just need to slightly open your memory wire and find a complete circle, because my first ring will just be 1 coil, and I need to make sure that I leave about 1/4 of an inch on each side because I will need to make a loop. So it's just a bit of extra material. So I'm just gonna go in there with my cutters and cut a single coil. For my second ring I need 2 coils, so I'm going to do the same thing. Open it slightly, 1 coil, 2 coils, and I leave a little bit of extra so that I'm able to fold and make my loop at the ends. And again, go in there with your cutters and snip. So that's my material for my 2 coil, and the last one has 3 coils on it. So again, I'm just going to open it slightly, 1, 2, my 3 coils, and a bit of extra for making a loop. So it will be about 1/2 an inch because I'll need about 1/4 of an inch extra on each side. And again, just put your memory wire cutters and give it a snip. So now I've got my coils ready for my ring, and the first one I'm going to do is the 3-coil run because it's the simplest one of all the rings in this set, and I need to make a little loop at the end of my coil, which I will do with my round nose pliers. Now, as I said before, this is aluminium, so it's very thick, so it's not the easiest thing to do, the loop, so just give it a bit of time. You might have to do it backwards and forwards just a couple of times because you want to make sure that it's nice and flush. So there we have it. So now I've got 1 loop at the end of my coil, and I have put my materials out on a plate so that they don't fall everywhere and spill, but I've tidied them in a little, I've got a little pattern going. So I've got about 10 pearls, and in between them I've got my bicone beads, but you can do it randomly or you can just mix them up. I think it's quite pretty to have a little pattern running through it, but it's up to you how you tidy them up. So you start off by threading your beads onto the coil, and the first ones are a bit tricky because the coil's quite tight together, but it will open as you thread your beads, and you literally thread the beads on and pull them along as you go. So now I've put on 10 of my pearls. I'm just going to push them along to the end. Of my coil. So just push it along with your fingers. Okay, so now I've got my 10 pearls right at the end of the first coil, and I'm going to put my little bicone beads, because that was the pattern that I made. So I'll just thread them on. I'm going to put 4 of them on in 2 different sizes, a 4mm and a 5mm, and I'll put them all together. And then I'll push them through in exactly the same way, right to the end. So as I said, memory wire, especially the memory wire that we use for rings, because it's aluminium, it's such a strong material. So don't worry if it's a bit fiddly, and it will become a bit looser when you wear it, but it won't lose its shape, so it won't be quite as stiff after a bit of wear, so it'll be nice and comfortable. So this makes one complete coil that's finished now, and I'm going to repeat the same thing again. So I'm going to put 10 pearls on, followed by 4 bicone beads. So now I've got the next 10 pearls on, and again I'm going to move them along the coils to the end. So I've almost got 2 complete rows now, and I'm going to be putting my next 4 bicone beads in the same pattern as before. So I'll put them on one after the other, and then I'll push them along. It's just easier, but So now that I've put on the next 10 pearls and 4 bicone beads, I've got 2 coils that are complete, and I've just got one left, and I quite like it because it looks like the top of my ring has a very definite pattern on it, so it's just very pretty. But as I said, you can mix them. I quite like it like this because it really looks like separate rings. So I'm going to just do the last one and show you how to finish it off. Now that I've put all my beads on the coils and I've pushed them all the way to the end, and make sure that you do so that there are no gaps. So just take them around right until the last coil, and you should have about 1/4 of an inch or just slightly over left at the end. And make sure that you don't have your beads right to the end, because you need to make your loop going backwards. And as I said, because this is such a strong material, you can't make a very small loop. So if you make the loop over a bead, it might crack it. So make sure that you leave enough of a gap to make your loop. And open it slightly so that you can get a good grasp of your wire with your round nose pliers, and place them about 1/4 of an inch down and loop back on yourself. And again, you might have to just do it a few times because it is such a strong material. So don't worry, it won't damage it and it won't ruin the shape. But the main thing is to make sure that you get the loop correct. And your ring is ready, and you can wear it any which way you like to show the pattern. So next I'm going to show you how to do the 2 coil one. And again, I'm just going to put the materials in my plate so that I can organize them. And for this one, apart from my beads, I've also got some pins for my little dangles. So I'm just going to put them to one side so it's easier for me to tidy up. And I am making my dangles with the pearl so that I can wear these together, and I'm going to just make the ring out of the crystal. So I'm just going to get my pattern ready on my plate so that I can thread the beads on to the coil in exactly the same way that I did before. So with memory wire, the most important thing is to get your materials ready and decide what pattern you want to have. Even if you want to have it random, it's easier to just tidy up all your beads so that you can just slip them on to the coils afterwards quickly. I'm just leaving the bigger ones for my little dangles, and I'm only going to use the smaller ones to put on the actual ring. And I think I might just start them off at each end with a bicone bead, because it's just a nice little, with a slightly bigger one, a 4mm one. So I just feel it just gives it a bit more detail. Okay, so I'm going to do the same as before. I'm just going to slightly open my coil, and I'm going to take my round nose pliers and I'm going to make the loop and the loop goes in the opposite direction of the coil. So I'm going to grab it and loop it back on itself. Take your time making this loop. You want this one to be nice and tight because you're going to have little dangles off this coil afterwards. So it's important that it's tight so that they don't fall off. So just have your loop on one side. I'm just going to tighten it a tiny bit more if I can. Okay, and then you just start feeding your beads on, and I'm going to just put the slightly bigger one first, as I said, just to give it a little accent at the top, just a bit more detail. So that will be my first one, and then I'm just going to put about 15 of the little ones and put a bit of the seed beads, these white ones that I've got, which are slightly larger, in between them, just to give it a little more detail, so it looks like a little pattern. So I've put 10 of my little crystal beads on, and I can see that it almost fills up a whole coil, so I'm not going to put 15. I've changed my mind, and my pattern is going to be 10 followed by 2 seed beads followed by another 10 crystal beads. So I'm just going to put my 2 seed beads on there now, my white ones. And I will push them along to the end coil just to make it tight, like so. And I will carry on with the same pattern. I've added an extra 10 of the crystal beads, crystal AB, because they've got a little coating on them, so they have a really lovely shimmer. And now I'm going to put my 2 seed beads on it, followed by another 10 of the crystal AB beads, and I'm going to close it. And it might be that I will need less beads for the last loop, so again, it's really vital to make sure that you leave at least 1/4 of an inch to make your loop backwards. So just gauge it as you put your beads along, making sure that there's enough of a gap left, and don't worry if it's not the exact quantity, because it won't be noticeable when you're wearing it. I've put the rest of the beads on, and I've finished it again with one of the larger bicone beads, the same as I've done on the other side, because this is just my little feature for both ends. And now I'm going to make the loop as before with my round nose pliers. So just separate your coil with your fingers, and don't worry, it is a hard material, so just give it a little tug, and with your round nose pliers make your loop going back, so the opposite way of the coil, and it is stiff, so take your time making it. and push the beads back so that you don't end up making the coil on any of the beads and damaging them. So just make sure you've left enough room. Once you manage to make the first little turn, it works fine. It's just that first little turn that's a bit difficult. And I'm just going to give it a little straighten. So now I've got my ring with its 2 coils filled up and the 2 little loops on either end, and I'm going to make a little cluster that will go on one of the loops as a little decoration. And I do this by putting beads on ball pins, and I have made my little clusters by putting 2 beads on each pin, and I'm going to make 3 of these. So place your beads on the ball pin, and just give it a little bend at the top and cut about 1 centimeter, and now make a loop with your round nose pliers. So make sure that your loop is nice and tight and secure with no gaps. I'm going to do the same thing again. So 2 beads on my ball pin, and I'm just going to make a little bend right at the top to secure them. I'm going to cut it about 1 centimeter, and then with my round nose pliers I'm going to loop it. I will straighten my loop and make sure that there are no gaps in it. And last one, I might use one of these white seed beads. And a crystal bead, so it's just a little delicate one. And again, I'm going to cut it, leaving about 1 centimeter. Maybe I've left a bit too much here. Just cut a little bit more. And I will loop it back. And give it a little tuck and a tidy. So now, with my 3 little dangles ready and my ring ready as well, I'm just going to attach them with jump rings. You can attach them straight to your loop, but I worry that maybe there's a tiny little gap there underneath that bead, and so if you do it with the jump ring won't be able to go through any gap, so it's safer, and also they do sort of dangle better if you do that. So I'm going to do 1 jump ring with 2 and 1 jump ring with 1 dangle on it. So I'm going to open my jump ring, and I will place 2 of my dangles on it, and then thread them through the loop. And close it. Again, make sure you close it very securely so there are no gaps in your jump ring, so your little dangles don't fall off when you're wearing it. And I will do the same thing again for the single dangle. So open your jump ring very slightly. You don't need to open it very much for this because it's so thin. The loops are so thin, so it will be easier for you to close afterwards. So place one, and then again through the same loop on the ring, and close it. And your ring, your 2-coil ring, is now ready. The last ring I'm going to show you to make is the single coil ring, and the difference with this ring is that unlike the other rings, which are not a fixed size and they will stretch to go over your fingers or fit any size finger, this one, because we need to finish it at the end, is a fixed size one. We can make some little adjustments to it to make it a bit bigger or a bit smaller, but it's just not quite the same as these, although we make it in very much the same way. So I'm going to start off by making a loop at the end with my round nose pliers. Just open your coil a little and place your round nose pliers in there, and loop back on yourself because the loop has to go the opposite way of the coil. It's not easy, so take your time and make a neat loop. I'm just going to straighten it ever so slightly. And I'm going to try and just make it a bit closer because I don't want any gaps in this one, because I do have to join it afterwards with a jump ring, and I don't want the jump ring coming out and the ring might fall apart. Okay, so this is my starting point. One loop at the end, and I'm just going to do the same as I did before. I'm going to put my materials in my plate and arrange the pattern that I want my ring to have. So this ring has 6 little dangles on it. I'm just going to put the ball pins to one side, and I'm going to leave the bigger beads to go on my dangles, and I'm going to make a pattern for the ring with the smaller ones. So I want the top ends of my ring to be a focal point. So I'm going to start off by putting a bicone bead at the top, followed by a large seed bead, and the rest of my ring will be the small seed beads. And I'm just going to lay it in the same way on the other side, and you will just have to see how many beads you can place on there, making sure that there's a 1/4 inch gap on the other side so you can make another loop. So I start off by putting my large bicone bead on and my large seed bead on as well. I'll have the same pattern going on both sides, and now I'm just going to fill the whole center part with the smaller seed beads. I've finished beading my single coil ring, and I've made the 2 loops at the top going the opposite way of the coil. So now in essence I have a ring, but these rings tend to be quite small. I'm just going to show you. I mean, they fit quite well, but to make sure that they have a bit more give, I'm going to join the 2 loops with a jump ring. You can join them with 1 jump ring or with 2 jump rings. You'll have to try it on your finger and see which is more comfortable. I'm going to show you how I join it with 2 jump rings, because then I feel like, because it's still quite stretchy, even if it's a bit loose on some of the fingers, you can use it on any of your fingers. So it's not a bad thing to do, but it's really down to you. You're going to have to try it and see what fits you best. So I start off by taking a jump ring and opening it, and I'm just going to put it on one of my loops, and I'll close it. Make sure you close it nice and securely so there are no gaps. So backwards and forwards a few times till you feel it's nice and tight. Nothing will happen to the jump ring if you move it backwards and forwards. It will keep its shape and it won't get damaged. And I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to take another jump ring. I'm going to open it slightly, and I'm going to feed it through the jump ring that's already there and through the other loop, and that's what will connect my ring together. And again, just close it and make sure it's nice and tight. So now this will just give your ring a bit more give when you're wearing it. So if it's a bit difficult to put on, it will just slide on more easily, and you won't see the jump rings because we're going to put the little dangles on them, but it will just be a lot more comfortable when you wear it. And I have made 6 dangles to go on this particular ring, and they all go on my ball pins, and I've made them all single. In fact, I've got one that's a double one and the rest are single, but it's up to you again how you choose to do it. And you place your bead on your jump ring and just give it a little bend at the top with your finger, cut it, leaving about 1 centimeter, and make a loop. And make sure your loop is nice and straight with no gaps. And I'm going to make 6 of these to go on my ring. Make them all in exactly the same way, but the pattern is up to you. I have my 6 pinned and looped beads ready now, and I'm going to attach them to the ring. Because I've already got jump rings here, I'm going to attach them straight to the jump ring, and I do this by opening my loop backwards and forwards just a little bit and slipping it straight onto the jump ring. And I'm going to put 3 on each jump ring so that they're evenly spread out. So just take your flat nose pliers and slightly open your loop forwards or backwards and slip it on the jump ring, and close it. And again the same, I just open it slightly and I'm going to slip it on the jump ring and close it. And once I've put them all on, I am going to go over it again and make sure that they're properly closed. At the moment I'm just trying to make sure that I've spaced them correctly. So this is the third little dangle on one loop, and now I'm going to do this exactly the same on the second one. I'm just going to pull it out so I know which one I need to do it on. Yep, it's this one here that I'm going to be applying the second lot to. So I carefully open it backwards or forwards, and I'm going to slip it on the second jump ring, a little bit fiddly, there we go, and close it. And the last one. And now, with my little cluster of dangles in place, I'm just going to quickly just go through them to make sure that I've closed them all properly and that they're not twisted, because it's a bit fiddly applying them as the memory wire sort of pulls your loops in. So the first thing to do is get the placing and then make your little adjustments to make sure everything's neatly closed. And there we go. So when you wear it, you won't actually see the jump rings because your little cluster will hide it. And also when you wear it, it will be completely balanced. So sometimes I know it can look very slightly lopsided with memory wire, but not when you wear it. And now it's up to you to decide if you're going to wear them all together or individually, and on which finger.